When you bring Lumbee history or any Native nation's history up into the present, you can no longer say to yourself that these people aren't part of our society or that their histories don't exist any longer.
The story of the Lumbee is important not only to that community, obviously, but also it remains vital for the rest of the American family. Why so?
Well, when we think of what makes American society distinct, what makes this nation a magnet for people all over the world, it is the consistent pursuit of justice and self-determination. I think American citizens of every background have consistently pursued those two things as it relates to themselves as individuals, but also for the common good, not just for themselves, but for their communities, for their cities, their towns, their states, their nation as a whole. American citizens, since the very founding of the nation, have pursued this sense of what is right and what is good. And Lumbee history has strong threads of the pursuit of justice and the pursuit of self-determination. And I think there's so much in Lumbee history and our stories that help Americans of any background really see the consequences of the pursuit of justice and the pursuit of self-determination. I think in general, though, American society can understand that Native people have not disappeared. By the time you get to much of 20th century U.S. history, Natives are just not part of the story. And therefore, my college students are surprised, in fact, to learn that we still exist and that we are still very much shaping American society even as we've been shaped by it. So that was one of the reasons why it was especially important for me to bring this story up to the present, is to have tools to talk about that continued existence and the ways in which we thrive in contemporary American society.
Interestingly, you write that just as Lumbee and American history is a group of stories that are told, that we tell, that we hear, it's also a collection of silences that conceal truths. What do you mean by that?
Well, one of the fascinating exercises in studying American Indian history is that the documentary record is not complete. And records don't tell truths by themselves. They require storytellers or historians to bring puzzle pieces together and kind of create an interpretation or a narrative of what actually happened in the past based on sources that can be quite fragmentary and contain as much silence as they do information. For example, one of the important ways to unearth Lumbee history is through genealogy, is through understanding how families relate to one another, pass information down, and fundamentally keep their sense of family together. And so there was the largest period of disruption in this process of Lumbee family making was before the Civil War, when at the same time as other tribes in the Southeast were being physically removed, Lumbee people were being kind of erased from the record and reclassified racially just in order to fundamentally make us disappear from the records as Native people. The individuals themselves had not disappeared. If you knew their family names, you could find them very easily. But if you were looking for racial labels or things that marked them as Native people, you never could find them. And so that's a silence in the record. The way that Indians were reclassified as mulattoes, for example, for the Civil War, is a kind of silence that's absolutely fundamental to being able to tell the story. Without understanding that the silence exists and then being able to work through the silence to unearth some information, we can't have a story. And the silence also reveals a truth, the truth being that race in America is a process that can be made and also unmade for the benefit, in this case, of people at the top of the power structure. But if we can create a racial system or a racial hierarchy for the benefit of people at the top of the power structure, I think as Americans, we can also undo that racial hierarchy for the benefit of every citizen. And when we look at how American Indian history, the silences around race and the ways that Indian identities have been erased, we see how silence is really a critical part of historical storytelling and the ways that we define and understand ourselves today.
You've been listening to a conversation with Malinda Maynor Lowery about her book, The Lumbee Indians, An American Struggle.